Record now.
Okay. Oh yeah, if you're all together, that'll be best. Yeah, thank you.
I was so much worse. Look at my sheet.
Okay, so I'll do a little intro now. So hi everybody, welcome to our Teaching Abroad event. I'm Hugh Anderson. I am Assistant Director in the International Programs Office, and we're joined tonight by Ryan Walker, who is a Cortland graduate 2014. So hello, hi Olivia, come on in. We are going to be focusing today about what the teaching experience is like so that it could be something that you perhaps do someday as well. So I can talk about that after Ryan does, but I'm going to turn it over to Ryan. I'm going to turn the camera around, and
Sounds good.
If people have questions, just hold them until the end. He'll definitely give you time for questions. Okay. There we go.
Hello, everybody. Hi. Thank you for coming today. My name is Ryan. I, like you said, was a Cortland graduate in 2014. I can't believe it's been 10 years now to think about it, but it has been. And I'm really happy I got to talk to Hugh and just kind of do this and start to build a connection, because I think that when I was a student and I was thinking about these things, I didn't know what to do. And basically that's what I want to talk about today. Just some very basic like step off points where you can start from and what you should be thinking about. Because I know that many of you, or I'm assuming, I'm not sure, but maybe I'll find out later, that you guys are probably in a student teaching semester if you are a teacher or an education major. And then you're probably thinking, what are my next steps going to be, whether it's I'm looking for a teaching job or I'm going to start a master's program, and how you can do those things at the same time as planning to do this teaching abroad. Hugh talked about briefly to some of you guys as you were walking in, I'm not sure who was there and who wasn't, about his experience teaching English in Japan. It's slightly different from my experience teaching in an international school, so I can't speak to Hugh's experience as a teacher through the program that he did, which is a program that people still use to this day. So he is a good resource for as well in the future. But I'm going to talk a little bit about what it's like to work at international school and my process kind of getting here as a physical education teacher. Because I know a lot of people, they want to teach abroad, but they don't want to teach English. So they want to teach what they studied and they don't know how to do that. So let's get started just with the PowerPoint. Like Hugh said, I'm going to give ample time in the end for people to ask questions because I think that's the most important area, but I want to use this as a starting point. This is what we're going to just briefly talk about this morning for me. But yeah, who am I? Why teach abroad? How do I start teaching abroad? Making a plan. Then I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Mr. Key, who's an assistant principal here at the school that I work at. And get a little perspective from him of kind of what the administration looks for, as well as what a school might look for. And it's a good way for you to hear from somebody who's part of a recruitment team at an international school. And then at the end, have ample time for question and answers. So a little bit about me. Again, my name is Ryan Walker. I studied to be a PE teacher at Cortland. I had a concentration, I think, in adapted PE. Then I did my master's online. I got my master's in health and wellness education through American College of Education. While being a Cortland student, I studied abroad at the German Sports University. I also went back to the German Sports University after Cortland. I started my master's degree, but I left early. It was a 2-year master's degree, and I left after a year because it just wasn't for me. That was a tough choice to make because I enjoyed living in Germany, but it was the right choice ultimately because the program was not what I was looking for, or not what I hoped it would be. After that, I moved to DC, and I was working in the District of Columbia Public Schools for 3 years before then moving over to Shanghai, where I've been now I'm completing my 6th year over here in Shanghai in China. So that's a little bit of my career. I'm in my 9th year teaching, and so far it's gone quite fast. You guys will be sitting in my position pretty soon, and you're going to be thinking to yourself, how did I get here? So why teach abroad? The obvious reasons, which is, I'm sure if you've studied abroad or thought about it, these exist as just even obvious reasons to travel, cultural exchange, teaching wise, professional development, when you're living abroad, travel opportunities to other places, and of course, language learning. I was speaking to Hugh earlier about his experience maybe learning Japanese while he was in Japan, and he was just discussing how much easier it is to pick up a language when you live there. I think these are all obvious reasons that people would first look to why you would teach or even study abroad if you're in that scenario. But what I want to just mention quickly are the not so obvious reasons. Depending on where you go abroad, different regions, let's just say like South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, or even down to like Australia. If you're going from America, especially to Asia, you're pretty much going to the other side of the world. And one of the things they'll do is they'll offer subsidized housing as a way to try and get people to come abroad. And it might not be so obvious. They might not put that out on the list of like what that actually looks like when they're looking for a candidate. So it's something that you should be aware of and ask those questions if you're looking for, because sometimes they can give you quite a competitive rate for the rent in your city, or even offer campus or off-campus housing for these schools that can be quite nice. The house that I live in, or the apartment, excuse me, that I live in right now is a 3-bedroom apartment that they give me for free, that if it was being rented to just a normal Chinese person and not being given to me free by my school would probably cost about 10,000 RMB is like, what is that, like 1,400 US dollars? Yeah, 1,500 US dollars a month. And I get that for free. And I pretty much was given that after 2 years of living on campus. And I mean, I can't really ask for much more than that. Competitive salaries, something Ed will mention later, is like my school, for example, pays us in USD. So I know from my research before I got here, the cost of living in China was going to be much lower than it was for me in DC. And so being paid in USD just allowed me to be able to send most of my salary home and to be able to live more comfortably with less, which was huge. And that can be something that you might not realize when you're looking at jobs, and it can vary greatly depending on the location that you go to. Europe, for example, going to be similar to your life in the United States, probably similar salaries for teachers, but also a general like kind of higher cost of living than, let's say, Asia, for example. But again, that doesn't always ring true, but you should be aware of it when you're looking for your job. Work-life balance. This is also something that I would have never thought of until I actually got abroad. Many of these schools that you're going to be working for, if you're teaching at an international school, are going to be pretty affluent schools. And unless you're like Hugh or even myself, I do go to like a local school and teach once a week. And that's a different experience compared to my school, which is like a private, very meticulous and methodical. Students are taking tests and exams and interviewing to get in. They've got resources for days. And because they have these resources and because they have large staff, it's really lessened my workload. When I was working in DC, I had 5 or 6 classes a day. We were an extended year school, so I went all the way until July 14th-ish. I had 2 weeks of summer, and then we would restart back up in August. And my extended days were also Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I didn't end at 4, I ended at 5. And it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. And I got here, and my schedule my first year, and this is legitimate, was 4 classes on Monday, 3 classes on Tuesday, 3 classes on Wednesday, 2 on Thursday, and 1 on Friday. So I could not believe that I was getting paid a salary to teach what I thought was a very small workload. And I say that with, take it with a grain of salt, because just because I have fewer classes or had fewer classes at the time doesn't mean that it was just automatically easier. The things that you need to get used to when you teach abroad, but that work-life balance was something that I still enjoy to this day. And I think that a lot of places, when I talk to teachers who worked in other places, Spain, or I've talked to teachers who worked in Egypt or Kuwait, Japan, and similar experiences for some people where they said, well, I didn't think my work-life balance was going to be that way. And compared to your experience in America, it could be drastically different. Then self-awareness and discovery. This you might think is in the obvious category, and it is, but what I wanted to say was the interesting thing I found is a lot of people don't go abroad for the sole reason that they're afraid to miss out on things that happen at home. And that makes a lot of sense. When I studied abroad in Germany, whatever happened the semester that I was abroad, I came back and everyone was like, can you believe this happened and that happened and these people and that people and this and that? I had no clue what they were talking about, because the whole time I was in Germany, I was basically focused on just enjoying it as much as I possibly could. Now things are a little bit different as an adult, and COVID happening, and I've been in China. I was in China from 2019 until 2023. I was here for 4 years, so I didn't see my family. I didn't leave China. The whole COVID time, I was just right here, and it was tough. It was really hard. That's not for everybody, and that's a special case scenario. But what I mean when I say there's going to be things that when you leave America and you go abroad that you will realize you didn't actually care that much about, that you just did every day because they were things that you were in routine of, is really true. You'll find that maybe that time you spend with your friends going to a certain restaurant, or a certain way you have your routine going, you're like, I couldn't live without it. I promise you that you probably can, and you can adapt that routine to wherever you're at. Interesting actually how people can really adjust to whatever it is they were doing previously and kind of make their new home similar to their old home, but things will change. You'll find out very quickly when you go abroad, like, hey, I found this strange. You think about it strange at first. The strange thing that Chinese people do, like, how do I feel about it? It's different than my culture. And you might find that actually, like, wait, I kind of find that to be something that's like, I value that. I do feel similarly to them. It's strange at first, but now it's something that I adopt and I can use in my own personal, my own personal life. And it also goes the other way. Maybe there's things where you're like, I am this way, and that's okay. So I think that you can find that through teaching abroad, whether for a year or 6, even, that I'm not. I still find things to this day that I'm like, I didn't think this about myself, but now that I'm here, it rings true. Where to start? How to start? These are the important websites that I think you guys need to know. These are like the 3 major players in the international teaching job posting websites. International School Services, ISS, is the service that I used when I was working in DC. I signed up when I was in my 3rd year, made a profile, and that's how I ended up getting the job in Shanghai, where I'm at today. Schroll is also a highly regarded website, and a lot of American international schools are on there. So there's a Shanghai American school, and I know that a lot of teachers get hired through Schroll from America to Shanghai International School, Shanghai American School through there. They're also on ISS as well, but you'll find a lot of American schools through there. And one other one that I know people have used before is Search Associates, another large website. A lot of these websites will have multiple, you'll find the same job postings over all the websites. It's not necessary for you to have profiles on every single one. They do have different, they will offer slightly different things. For example, when I signed up for ISS, it was a 2-year kind of profile. I think I paid $150 for a 2-year profile to keep my profile open. And when I signed up, I went through all the basic things you would imagine. I kind of put in who I am, my resume, a CV. I got recommendation letters from my administrators. And it basically had this online profile for me that schools could discover me and I could discover schools. And so that's what I was going to talk about in the making a plan section, which is laid out in this graphic because I don't think any of these are necessarily 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a step plan, but they are all part of the plan. So in the middle, I said I had create and complete a profile on one of the international teaching websites. Now, $150 or $175 might be a lot of money, for a ending college student, and I totally understand that, or a person who's just starting their career. But like I said, it'll be open for 2 years, and the major benefit is that people can contact you. You can contact them, of course. You can put in feeler questions and try to put in for jobs. But I really think the feature of people being able to find you is super important, because especially this time of year when schools might not have filled up their staff and are still looking to hire, they might look for people who are just on the website and maybe have not inquired about their job, and you never know where or who might contact you, which is how I actually got to China, but I'll talk about that later. I wrote complete all your required teaching certifications, exams. That seems obvious, but it depends on what you're going for. If you want to teach at a legitimate international school, most of them are going to require for you to have a legitimate teaching certification. When I say legitimate, I generally mean a either nationally or state recognized exam. If you're going to be doing an English, a TEFL, That's a different certification, and you can receive that from their website. But other schools that are looking for that are going to be different. It'll be tough to get a job at a school like mine with just a TEFL teaching certification. The part on the right, gain teaching experience, 2 to 4 years recommended. When I was in college and I was inquiring about this, they told me you will not get a job if you don't have at least 2 years of experience, if not more. Like a guy that I knew that had done this and he taught in Ecuador, he told me you need at least 5 years or no one's going to even look at you. So I went to DC just thinking, okay, I'm going to work. I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to get my experience, and I'm going to look for it once I start having some years under my belt. Come to find out, the day I arrived in China, I met some other teachers, and they had just graduated like in the spring, and this was their first teaching job ever. And I was a little bit, not upset, I don't know what the right word is, but I was like, wow, I should have at least had a profile open and done this a bit earlier, because maybe I would have been here 2 years earlier. However, I will say gaining teaching experience is invaluable. When I got here and I'd already had 3 years of teaching experience under my belt, things like classroom management were no problem for me anymore. Where any teacher, the first thing that they're going to start out with is classroom management is going to be the most difficult thing to do. And it doesn't matter what school you're at. Doesn't matter if you're at this school where I said the student population is a quite affluent population, or if I'm in DC and things were difficult from day to day. But the classroom management is going to be difficult no matter what. So I do recommend you get some experience. However, having a profile open, you could find yourself teaching internationally as soon as next fall. Make a list of like 5 to 10 countries, or just like I said before, regions. You could just write down Europe or Africa or South America or Central America that you're interested in teaching, and then begin researching. And find out what life is like. Find out, what salaries do people make? How much do they live like with that salary? How much do they spend on food? How much do they spend on just general, I don't know, things like nightlife or recreation? And base it upon your personal experiences. If that's something that you value, if you value going to a rock climbing gym and you need that as a thing, like, are there rock climbing gyms in the city that you want to go to? Those types of questions can make your life much better if you're pre-prepared rather than showing up and not knowing what to experience. Last but not least is join international teaching communities online for the countries or regions you're interested in. Great places to go is like Reddit. There's a international teachers Reddit, like a subreddit, as well as I would say pretty much every city you could think of probably has its own subreddit. As well as there's quite a bit, like there's like a China teachers Reddit that I know people are a part of, and it can be very helpful to find out who's in a similar scenario as you, visa questions, like housing questions. If something comes up where people are looking for experience from people who've been around, it's a really good way to do it. I know I talked to Hugh earlier about him living with and around other teachers who worked at his school, and that can be a really invaluable experience to show up and have experienced teachers tell you what's up, because they've been through it themselves, and you can already kickstart that process by joining one of those places. LinkedIn, you also, if you start inquiring around there, I'm sure you will get hits from schools looking for teachers. And YouTube is always great because you can actually see like what's happening and how people are living through vlogs or things like this. These are things that I would do if I were you and in your scenario. I want to pass it over to my colleague, Ed, Mr. Key, and he's going to talk a little bit about our school specifically, Shanghai High School International Division. So I'm going to pass that over to Ed.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, hello everyone. Good evening, right?
Yeah, good evening.
Morning here. So yeah, thank you. I think Ryan has sort of gone through quite comprehensively, the main things to consider when you move abroad, especially into teaching. I'm just going to give a little introduction to myself, but I'm here just to talk a little bit about our school specifically, to help maybe frame what it's like in an international school abroad. So yeah, I am the assistant principal of the primary and middle school in Shanghai High School International Division. Don't get thrown by the name of high school. We are a grade 1 through 12 international school. And similarly to like Ryan was talking about his like trajectory through his own education and employability history, I started in history and English, got a master's, and then the PGC QTS, which is the teaching cert in the UK. Similar to Ryan, I taught in the UK for 7 years, and then it's same as Ryan actually, right? my 6th year now.
Yeah.
I think we came at the same time. But what I don't want to talk too much about myself, but what I wanted to emphasize here was the opportunity that's available in an international school. So I was hired as a middle school English teacher. And then within these 6 years, I've been able, through hard work and through adapting to the school's philosophy and culture, that I've been able to sort of have a variety of roles and get promoted into instructional coach role, subject head of English, and then last year into the assistant principal role. And Ryan's the same. That Ryan came and has been able to progress through into becoming like a veteran teacher within the school, like a senior teaching role, and the opportunity like that in the UK, speaking specifically, but probably same in the US, it takes a bit of a longer process to go through that. I'm a bit mindful of time, but we'll watch this video. Hopefully the audio connects.
Is it possible if you could just give me a thumbs up if the audio is coming through? Thank you.
Shanghai High School International Division. From 1993 to 1998, it underwent the change from nothing to something. The number of students rose from 18 students in the high school to 230 across the primary, junior, and senior high school sections. From 1998 to 2023, the number of students increased to over 3,000, covering grades 1 through 12. Initially starting from scratch, SHSID has grown into a highly influential and reputable school over the past 30 years. Since 2010, SHSID has been determined to move from great to strong, to promoting selectiveness, modernity, and depth of school courses. The school has shaped itself as a domestically leading institution with a worldwide reputation with its highly flexible courses.
The students here are excellent. They're eager to learn. They're very passionate about their studies, and they're motivated. The team here is just full of fantastic teachers. Every single person here is supportive to one another. They're always there whenever you've got a challenge. It doesn't matter if you're having an issue with a small part of a lesson, with managing your class's behavior.
One of the things I love most about SHSID is sport clubs. SHSID offers many traditional sports like basketball, football, and swimming, but also offers some very unique sports like darts, kendo, and kendama. There are more than 500 students who participate in these clubs from grades 1 to 12. SHSID also offers a wide variety of music clubs for students to be able to join. They can join the wind ensemble, string ensemble, choir, dancing club, L2D, or even the opera club. In total, it's just about 20 clubs for students to join in the music and performing arts category.
This year marks the 30th anniversary of the founding of the International Division of Shanghai High School.
It's our sincere belief that SHSID will embody the spirit of emulating both the Chinese and foreign ideals in the new era, and in doing so, it will dazzle the world of education, both in China and abroad.
Okay, so yeah, hopefully that gave you a bit of an insight into our school specifically, but also maybe what these international schools are like, and the obviously very academic focus, but also especially in our school the last few years trying to engage more in extracurricular activities. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our school specifically, but I feel that what I'm about to say is probably applicable to most international schools. So within our school, we have over 170 expat teachers in our primary, middle and high school from UK, US, Ireland, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. The way that this works, like Ryan was saying before, that we hire primary school English, science and social studies, middle school English and social studies teacher, high school English, high school history, PE, and then other specialisms. So like it could be economics or philosophy or psychology within that. I think Ryan was right that we do prefer teachers to come in with like that teaching cert or teaching background. However, I've put down here that when I interview candidates, what I'm looking for is I sort of assess, it's a difficult task, but sort of assess someone's personality and how well they're going to fit into our culture and philosophy. And the teachers in our school, and I think generally internationally, overcome those challenges of what it's like to move abroad. But those who have a collaborative attitude and a genuine desire for growth as an educator become a successful member. Whether you've been teaching for 20 years, for 1 year, or you're just newly qualified, I think everyone has something to provide. And if you follow that equation, then I think you're going to be like a good fit in our school. And like I said before, in our school specifically, the opportunities for growth are ample, and that's another really good pulling side for our school. In terms of recruitment, I know Ryan spoke about, Stroll and ISS are the main platforms to look at, and they do accept different backgrounds. So like whether you've got, I know Ryan mentioned about TEFL, some schools abroad do accept the TEFL and even new graduates as well. But if you sign yourself up to them, I think Ryan said the price, but I think Stroll's slightly cheaper. So go for that. And if you're interested in our school specifically, been very quick this morning, but please feel free to email recruit@shsid.org, or alternatively connect to Ryan through Hugh or something similar, right? Okay, cool. I'm going to pass over to, Ryan's going to join me again. An opportunity for any Q&A. I think mainly for you, Ryan, but I'll be here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Let me stop sharing for a second.
Thank you very much. That was really informative.
I try to keep it as brief as possible.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, I know. I am the same way. All right. So I saw a hand over there. So go right ahead. I'd say probably speak up a little bit with your question. Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
I hear you.
Okay, I was wondering about the whole visa process, and if you have a visa, what kind, when does it expire, how do you renew it, etc.
That's a good question. So I think I heard you clearly enough, but it did get a little muffled. But your question was about visa and doing the reapplication of a visa?
Yes.
That's for how you apply, that type of thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. So originally, getting the visa to get to China was actually my most difficult visa to get. And it depends on where you're going to go. Obviously, for Americans, our passport is quite strong. So for things like going to Europe or something like that, I don't think, and I don't know, so I don't want to speak to it, but I'm just going to say that I don't think it was as difficult as getting here. And the only reason I say that it was difficult was just because there was like a lot of cross your T's and dot your I's. So it took me a couple months when I first applied to get my initial entry visa. It took me about probably like 3 or 4 months to get that, but everything was fine. It just was cross your T's, dot your I's. When I got here, our school does a great job every year of re-upping our visas. So for China specifically, it's a 1-year visa, right? It's a 1-year visa, and every spring they'll send out a big message to the foreign teachers, and we'll drop off our passports, and 2 or so weeks later we'll have our passports back and everything's fine. They do it for us. You can do it yourself if you prefer, but I think most people let the school do it for you. And from what I understand from a lot of other people who've taught abroad, there's similar many schools offer a similar service. I can't say every school offers that service, but generally that's kind of a thing an international school would offer, because they will usually have like a foreign affairs department that will be in charge of taking care of those types of things for you.
Good, thank you. Other questions? Yeah, I'll ask a question if, but please do.
I kind of have like a question for you. So
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
imagine you didn't have a teaching.
I did not have a teaching certificate,
So
no.
what was, like I'm a biochemistry degree.
Right.
So like, what's your like route?
So I'll speak a little bit more about my experience after we're done talking with Ryan. But yes, there are opportunities like that. I know Ed was saying that sometimes I believe, you know, teachers can be recruited even without a teaching degree. But
Yeah,
Ryan, have you worked with anybody who doesn't have a teaching degree? Is that a good question, I guess?
Yeah, especially to be honest with you, especially because of COVID and the situation in China being such that they weren't having people come in frequently. There was quite a few people who were hired without teaching certifications over a variety of, not just at our school, but many schools over a variety of different subjects. And plenty of teachers that I know that didn't have a teaching certification started working and over a few years got a teacher certification and have become wonderful teachers. So yeah, it's not so much about the teacher certification as it is about the person themselves, like Ed was saying before. But obviously, when you sign up on those websites, it can be quite daunting to basically see what they're looking for in a candidate. But like Ed mentioned briefly, as a person who's part of the recruitment team, he will look for those people that might be, you know, kind of outside what they would be looking for on paper, but would provide a valuable or become a valuable member of like the school community. Oh, Ed,
Yeah.
if you hear him, he said they just need an undergraduate degree for a visa. So anything in undergrad.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. A lot of, I think what got me the position that I had teaching with the JET program in Japan was just personality and like presence and conviction and that type of thing. And I feel like they looked at my application and my interview and thought, okay, this is somebody who can grow into that teaching role, you know, and I think I did, but I was happy to have them take that chance on me. Yes, next question.
Are there any more certifications that you have to acquire before you can teach, for your example, in China? Like, were they the same certifications you had to get in order to teach from the US to China?
That's a really good question. Every school is going to require something different, and I think different regions might have like slightly different requirements. But really, the base requirement that I saw when I was applying for jobs was just having like the degree in teaching. So I was never asked to complete a I don't think there's any such thing as like a foreigner coming to China and getting a Chinese teaching degree. You can do that. I do know many foreigners who came to China, studied at university here. Some of them they studied Chinese history, language, a variety of things. So they do hold a degree from a Chinese university, but there's no requirement that I know of specifically for China. And I've never been made aware of that being a major issue for anyone else. I know many people who've taught, I mean, all over, name a country, and I've probably met someone or come across someone who's taught there, and I've never come across someone saying, "Oh yeah, I had to go through a very difficult, you know, exam process for a new teaching certificate." You know, New York luckily has quite a strong teaching certification. Yeah. And you know, even when I went to DC and when I showed up, they basically were like, "Oh, you have a New York teaching license?" I said, "Yes," and they just made a DC teaching license on the spot and handed it to me. So I had friends come from like Virginia, which is right next to DC, and they didn't even get reciprocity. So you know, it was quite lucky that we came from a New York university so that we were able to have a strong teaching license right off the bat.
Ryan, what is the academic year like? What's the school year like? And what's the time of the school day like in China, where you are?
That's a great question. I briefly mentioned before Shanghai American School, and mostly the reason I did that is because I can use it for comparing it to an American, like an American school, because it really operates exactly as you would expect a public school in America to operate. And it kind of trips me out, honestly, when I go over there for basketball games, because it's like walking from you're on the streets of China and then you walk in, you're like, where am I? It's exactly like one replica of like what you would just expect from a school. And they operate basically the same exact way a public school would operate. They have the same holidays, they have the same the same vacations that you would get at Christmas time or winter or for Easter and things like this. If you go to an international school like ours, which is a Chinese-run international school, and if you go to most other countries, they do tend to try and give people major holidays off for the holidays that they celebrate. However, there are holidays that just, kind of fall. I don't want to say it, but I guess they're less important than other holidays. We do get a holiday break for Christmas because they recognize that that's obviously quite an important holiday for many people. It's a short holiday, but we do get it. And from what I understand in the past is that it wasn't always offered. But for example, for Thanksgiving, we're not going to receive, any holiday or a day off or anything like that. However, because it is an international school, I do think that our school does an excellent job celebrating a ton of different holidays. I think these kids end up learning about a lot of different holidays from teachers all over the world that I wouldn't have been aware of when I was a kid, just because it wasn't something that I would have experienced in my daily life. So I kind of lost track of what I was trying to say, but
No, that's good. That was good information. Yeah, just wondering, the differences between the schools here.
Sorry, let me. I got lost for a moment. Thank you, Ed, for bringing me back. To talk a little bit about just like what the school year looks like. So we start school at 8:05 and we end school at 3:50. Teachers stay till I think 4:05, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 4:05. So for me as a PE teacher and as a coach, I'm often here until 6 o'clock every day. If I have games, might be longer, or I might have to travel to just another school. That's normal. It's pretty normal PE teacher, coach type of situation. There is a lot of opportunities for clubs, after school clubs, which is one of my favorite things about working at this school, because I also love video games and I have a bunch of high school students that I like to meet up with. We have a club on Wednesdays where we play Super Smash Brothers. On Fridays, I meet with a couple students and we play this Japanese game called Kendama. I also work with students and we work on a basically like the school sports what would you call it, online newspaper? I don't know. Online. Yeah. So I also, and Hugh could tell you, I'm sure, but I did a lot of media for Cortland when I was there. And that's another hobby of mine. So, apart from being a teacher, the best part about being a teacher for me is always those extracurriculars, because that's where you really get to bond with the kids. That's where you really get to see them in more than just a student light, and you get to learn about them. So I've always enjoyed that, and that's just extra. That's what you want to put in. But if you were just to put your head down and kind of grind and go through the day, as needed via your contract, then you'd be looking at like a 8 to 4. And 5 days a week. You have kind of a big break for the Chinese New Year when we have about a month off. Which is quite nice. So it's kind of similar to your break in between the 2 semesters. Yeah. And then, of course, summer is usually from the first day of whatever the last working day. So whatever the last Friday is of June until probably about the 3rd week of August. So a decent summer as well. Yeah. From September 1st is the school year to the end of the 2nd week of June.
Okay, good. Yeah. So that's pretty similar.
Yeah. Very similar. Very similar. Just different because you'll have some Chinese holidays. For example, we have the national holiday is in October. So it's interesting because you work for a month and then you have a whole week off. So it's a quick holiday. You're like, wow, we just had summer, we started working, and then we're off for a week, which is nice, but it is an interesting time to have a holiday.
Great. Other questions? Yes. I love the questions. Thank you.
Did you have a master's going into China? Did you ever get one in the US?
Yeah, I when I was working in DC, I did my master's online, and I think that was the right decision in hindsight, because I got my professional certification in New York, which I'm not sure what the rules are currently, but at the time it was in 5 years of your graduation, getting a professional or a master's degree in something related to PE would give me my professional certification for life, I believe. And so that was important to do. But on the flip side is a lot of schools will give you quite a large bonus for having a master's degree. So the base salary at the time when I came here was $3,200 a month. And now Ed is letting me know that now the base salary is $4,200 a month. But also coming in with a master's, I was getting $500 extra a month for having a master's degree, which is quite a big swing for going into a position. And I know teachers here who, came in and were in the process of finishing their master's degree but hadn't finished it, so they missed out on that opportunity for getting that master's degree in their contract and getting that extra $500 on their base salary.
Great, thanks. Yes, next question.
So you said housing, like your first 2 years you lived like on campus, like what was that like?
Yeah, so when I first got here, I had moved, just a long story short, I had moved from Cortland to Germany for my master's, moved back from Germany to Long Island, where I'm from. Then I moved from Long Island to Annapolis, Maryland, where I first lived when I was working in DC. And then from Annapolis into DC, I moved twice in DC, and then I finally got to China. So by the time I got here, I was just tired of moving. And the requirement from the school was that they had on-campus housing that you must live in for the first year. And when I lived there, it was really fine. It's a nice transition when you don't know if you're going to be here for longer. So the great thing about our school was that it was a year contract to start, which for most people is kind of a nice feeling because you can do anything for a year. And if you don't like it, you can leave after a year, no harm, no foul. Like your contract is only 1 year long. And so living there, it was like three rooms, basically. It was a large bathroom, obnoxiously large, a nice like living room kind of kitchen situation, and a really big bedroom. And for 2 years, I ended up living there because I just didn't feel like moving anymore until I got a spot at our off-campus housing. So our school offered the on-campus option first, and then if you continued and had a contract moving forward, then you can move to the off-campus housing. And actually, the off-campus housing is about a 15-minute scooter ride, like a Vespa scooter. So many of the teachers, we all have like scooters, and it's not far, and it's a very nice community, quiet, and the whole building is actually full of teachers from our school. However, there are other options as well. If you work at one of our satellite campuses, then the school may give you a stipend, and then it really depends on where in the city or where in the city or how much you're willing to spend. I know a few teachers who just use the stipend, and I know a few teachers who use the stipend and add an extra $150 or $200 so they can live in an area that they really like or something like this. But housing options can be quite lucrative in Asian countries. Oftentimes I hear from people, Korea offers like excellent housing options. Coming from abroad to teach in Korea, I can speak from experience that many of the cities in China do as well. However, there's just a big difference between if you're going to go to a mega city like Shanghai, which is 26 million people, and you're going to go to a much smaller city like Zhengzhou or something, which might only be 4 or 5. Well, it's a small city in China, 4 or 5 million. And the experience can be quite different because you're talking, Shanghai is a very internationally focused city, and Zhengzhou or Shenzhen might be a little bit more Chinese, if that makes any sense.
How much did it cost for you to live on campus?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
How much did it cost for you to live on campus? Or was that
I didn't
high?
pay anything. Free. Rent was free.
Yeah, and when I was teaching in Japan, I had a similar situation where I got my housing and a car, and I paid about $50 a month. So I was in a village. I was in a village of 3,000 people, so very different from a major city. But there are a lot of teaching positions you can get around the world where subsidized housing, or they'll provide some transportation for you. So there are quite a few things like that can really help bring the cost down of your living.
Yeah.
I ended up saving a lot of money when I was abroad. Like I had friends who were, traveling a lot and spending their money, and I was doing it more frugally. Like I would be like, oh, can I get a ride in the back of your car when you're going to this festival, that type of thing. But I would save a lot of money, which helped because after I taught abroad, I came back and I had a little like nest egg while I was looking for more teaching jobs.
Yeah, there's actually 2 things I wanted to mention to that, Hugh, and I'm happy you brought that up. So one of them is like, I'm gonna be a little bit more like frank with you guys, because I think if someone had sat me down, I would have had a better idea. And my dad sat me down when I first got my job and I signed my contract in DCPS. And at the time, the base salary was $52,000. And I had like stars in my eyes. I was like, oh my goodness, I am going to be living the life. Like I just had been working at a summer camp making $450 a week or something like that. And this money seemed like it was impossible. My dad sat me down. He's like, he was an athletic director, by the way. So he had quite a bit of experience. And he was like, look, this is how it's going to work. Like, here's this expense and that expense. And this was going to cost for rent. And the number obviously shrunk quite a bit by the time he ended that. And I was like, you know, that's the first time where I kind of like was naive and just got an experience of like, oh, wow, okay, this is where the money goes and how that number can dwindle quite quickly. And in DC, I was paying $1,300 almost dollars a month in rent. So for 12 months, you're talking a pretty hefty rent. To go from that to coming here, which I told you originally the base salary was $3,200 plus the $500 that I got from my master's. And you would think on paper that taking a huge pay cut like that was devastating, but it was quite the opposite. It was very similar to Hugh, where the cost of living here was so cheap. And because I wasn't paying any rent, I was able to save and pay off even the rest of the student loans that I had from Cortland in just 2 years, and then still develop a very healthy savings without really having to try too hard. Yeah, and I don't know how to say that in a way that doesn't sound, I don't want to come off cocky or something, but the reality that I'm trying to tell you is if I was in your position sitting there and someone was talking to me, I would want to know, financially, am I able to go abroad? And like what Hugh said, he was a little bit like holding back, even though he probably could have taken a little bit more chances to spend some of that money and travel or do some other activities. I had the same kind of thing. I came here and I was very frugal the first 2 years. I didn't travel very much. I didn't go very many places because I was trying to, pay off student loans, and I was trying to really set myself up financially to the point where, I realized that I could be a little bit more, what's the right word? Yeah, I could spend a little bit more and do a little bit more with my money. And then the second thing I wanted to mention was, when you go and you look for those opportunities online, like I mentioned before, a lot of people will talk about the prices of things, and it can be very difficult to explain how things translate over. For example, you might go look at how much someone is spending in like a major city in Europe, like Paris or Berlin, and it's going to be pretty comparable, and you're going to probably have a decent understanding of the kind of European lifestyle compared to American lifestyle, and it's very comparable. Asia is like a completely different beast. So many of these places, when you look at the numbers, you're going to probably not believe how cheap it is comparatively. And if, like I said before, your school pays you in USD, then really think about some of the conversion rates and for the things that you're doing. I mean, I think, I eat on campus, so I don't pay for lunch every day. I probably spend about $2 on food every day. Like if I'm going to the grocery store and buying some veggies and meat and like the things I need to cook for the week, like legitimately is really only going down to $2 or $3 a day. And I have a family, so those types of things it's really hard to describe. And when you're reading on the internet, it's really hard to get a feel for like what it's like. So watching some vlogs and seeing maybe some people living their daily life will really help put it in perspective, I think. Those be hard to understand.
Yeah, I think it's good to know these benefits because a lot of times people are afraid to leave what they know here and the teaching style and the teaching atmosphere. But when you hear about benefits like this, I think it makes it a lot more common that you'll be willing to kind of make that jump to do something like this because, yeah, it's absolutely a really nice thing to do. And you might do it for a year, you might do it for 2 years, you might end up doing it for longer. I taught English in Japan 20 years ago. There's still teachers I knew then who are still in countries around the world teaching. So you can, parlay it into a lot of other opportunities.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because of the COVID situation, things were quite a bit difficult. I think if I had If I had been sitting here and I had 6 years of experience and COVID hadn't happened, I mean, our school gives us like a travel stipend. So that's something I didn't mention actually, and I should have. I'm realizing now. A lot of schools, especially in Asia, because you're going to literally be flying around the world, will offer a flight stipend. So I mean, previously when I was flying, like the first year I was here and I went back and forth to America, it was enough to cover my flight. So basically I was getting over here for free, via being like, via a school. A lot of people ask me too, they're like, oh, I just don't have the personality to work abroad. Like they think that you have to somehow be, those super adventurous, like, living in a hostel on $1 a day, traveling from here to Australia type people. And you don't need to be that. That's not true. These international schools are schools. So the same lifestyle you would live in America is very similar to the lifestyle you would live teaching at an international school, but just in a different place. And I think that it's, I meet a lot of people here who would be, more by the book and not that like international traveler person that you would expect. And that's normal. It's kind of a wide range of personalities. And like I said, you can really do anything for a year. So if you can commit yourself to trying it, you might find out that 6 years later, you're still somewhere that you didn't anticipate on being originally. True.
Let's do time for one more question if there's one more question. Yes, go ahead.
Can you talk about the language barrier and like if you like fully understand the language?
Sorry, Hugh, could you just
Yeah. So she was just saying, could you talk a little bit about the language barrier and what's your understanding of the language?
Yeah, so currently, I do speak Chinese now, which I came over here knowing no Chinese. Ed cannot speak. Ed cannot speak it. I would actually say that because of COVID now, there's a large portion of our staff specifically that speaks Chinese, because a lot of people who stayed through the COVID time were people that were committing to being here, which I think is a testament to the life that we have here, is that it is good enough to stay through a very difficult world situation, world pandemic, but that's a whole nother conversation. But the language barrier specifically that I've experienced here in China was quite difficult in the beginning, because it's not like learning Spanish or French or German, where it's at least relatable and you can kind of read signs and understand it because you had some Spanish in high school, or German looks a little bit like English. You kind of recognize some words and it can feel a little bit more comforting. But I kind of think that's just a fallacy, because a foreign language is a foreign language. So no matter where you go, there's going to be a disconnect regardless. But also, no matter where you go, you have the benefit of being a native English speaker. And English is the second language spoken by, the majority of the world's population. So yeah, it really just goes day by day. I mean, like I said, like I speak Chinese now. And like when I even go to do things, sometimes I go and I'm trying to ask a question and people will just wave me off because they just see a foreigner and they think like, I don't want to deal with it because it's going to be a hard conversation to have. My Chinese is not perfect, but I can speak and do everything I need to do on a day-to-day basis and more. But I'll still have people kind of just wave me off like this, and I'm like, I'm talking to you in Chinese. I'm asking you a question, and they just kind of still give me the cold shoulder. So it's the same anywhere. You could go some places and people are willing to assist you and bend over backwards to help you if you can't speak a word of Chinese, and sometimes people just can't be bothered. But I've heard from people who lived in Korea and Japan, it can be the same thing. A lot of the Asian countries, the young population will speak English, but the older population will have no English ability whatsoever. So you can kind of rely on finding like a younger, either high school or college aged Chinese kid, and they probably could speak some decent English. But again, the older population, my wife is Chinese and her parents can't understand hello. So, it's can be quite difficult if you go travel around China or if you go travel around Japan and you're not in a major city. It can be quite daunting.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. Thank you, Ryan. We don't want to keep you from class. I know you got class in 5 minutes, right?
That's 7, but yeah, it's all right.
Got it. Okay. I'm always early. All right. Thank you so much. This was Excellent. And I mean, the fact that we're recording this is great because I definitely want other students to be able to, learn from this and learn from what you've told us today. So thank you so much.
Of course, no problem. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you guys taking your time out of your day to come and ask some questions and hear some information. I really do. It means a lot.
Good. Okay. Well, we'll talk soon, Ryan. But yeah, it's great to connect with you. Thanks again.
Yeah, have a good night, everybody.